Shalom, brothers and sisters. Today's Thursday Thought will be shared with us by James, a friend of the fellowship from Kentucky.
Good morning and shalom to you from the hills of southern Kentucky. The sun is shining and it's already 85 degrees and really humid. So we give thanks for the blessing of air conditioning. I'd like to share with you this morning a thought that comes from King David's great penitential psalm, Psalm 51. And in verse 6, it reads, "Behold, thou desirest truth in the inward parts, and in the hidden part thou shalt make me to know wisdom." It would be very easy to lose this thought of David's because of the overriding theme of the psalm itself. We're talking a moment in his life in which he's presenting himself before Yahweh in absolute contrition. He has just sent Uriah off to be killed and taken Uriah's wife as his own, and they've conceived a child. The prophet Nathan has come to him to confront him about his stuff. And so David's really, truly repentant. And as a side, I've often found when I'm having trouble making peace with my own demons, meditatively reading and praying this psalm really does help to bring things home. But I'd like to focus on this particular verse because in it David elucidates something for us that is, I think, the heart of teshuvah, the heart of repentance, and that is being able to look deep within, to acknowledge what's deep within, and to be willing to address that openly with the Almighty. That's a huge step. Many of us, when we're faced with our own difficulties and problems and wrongdoings, like to say, "Oh Lord, please forgive me because I've sinned." And that's okay as far as it goes, but real teshuvah, real repentance, real turning requires something much deeper. It requires going to the heart of the matter. Essentially, that's what David's telling us. God desires that we go to the heart of the matter, the root of the matter. What is bringing us to this place of broken thinking, broken choices, broken actions? I'm not proposing an approach to repentance that requires beating oneself down. That's not it at all. But an approach that says, okay, this is what has happened, plainly and directly, and let's look to see why I did what I did, or why I'm acting the way I'm acting, why I have these continuing patterns in my life that are unhealthy for myself, for others, for the world around me, and they are damaging to relationships. Often in the world of spirituality, religion, and church, we try to lump our spiritual well-being and our mental well-being into one great big whole, and we set all that out before our spiritual leaders, our elders, and hope and expect that they're going to be able to do all of that. And quite frankly, no one in this incarnation is really qualified to deal with all of those aspects of our being. yes, our elders and our spiritual leaders can help us to work through the spiritual ramifications and to help us to carve out new paths. But most of our broken thinking and choices and actions derive from a deeper place, a place of mental and emotional brokenness. And that brokenness is nothing to be ashamed of. It's the result of a whole lifetime of living in a world that is broken. A world where unfortunate things happen, and sometimes broken people do very broken things and cause us tremendous harm. And unfortunately, in many traditional approaches to Christian spirituality, we're taught to just forgive these things and let them go. They're in the past, after all. Unfortunately, our minds don't work that well. They don't work that way at all. Our minds are much more complex, and though we might be able to compartmentalize those things, if they're not addressed and dealt with appropriately in a healthy way, they're going to keep coming up. And we're not going to be able to really walk this path of teshuvah, this path of redirection and change, so that we can live better and love better. That's why it's really important when we start looking at the truth in our innermost being, we have to take a really courageous step, and that is to look at the dark side, our shadow self. And a very important part of that is after we've looked at it, we seek appropriate help for addressing that brokenness. Some of that is from our spiritual leaders, from our elders. Some of that, and I would dare say, in fact, most of that, will require the intervention of psychological professionals. I know that's a tough pill to swallow, and maybe it might seem on the surface out of place in a Sunday talk on teshuvah. But we have been gifted, particularly in first world countries, with individuals who are talented and well trained in looking at these deep things and working through the damage they've done and working through the thought patterns they've created, these thought patterns that are leading us to make choices, decisions, and actions that are not in our own best interest or the best interest of anyone else. I guess what I'm trying to get at is, at the end of the day, God desires the truth that we hold in our innermost being. God doesn't need us to talk about it for God's own benefit, but for our benefit. And just as our elders, our spiritual leaders, can help us to work through the spiritual ramifications, God has gifted us with psychological professionals to help us too. There is no shame in needing that type of intervention. There's no shame in working through therapy. There is nothing to be ashamed of when we have been broken to the point that we need a good Band-Aid, psych meds, to help us to clear our thoughts enough to work through these things and to live healthy and productive lives. I'd like to encourage you to look deepward to the inward parts. Be honest about what is spiritual and what is psycho-emotional. And be strong and courageous in choosing, deciding, even with the guidance of our elders, who best can help us, who best can help you, who best can help me. God bless you. Shalom.